Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to go ahead and get started just to honor those who have made the effort to be here on time. I know that's not always easy. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Tonight we have a very special guest. I'm very excited to introduce her to all of us. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Amanda Lamb, and I'm the director at the Center for Family Initiatives at the Pine River Institute. The Pine River Institute is an in-person treatment center for youth ages 13 to 19 who are struggling with addictive behavior and mental health challenges. One of the amazing books that we have on our must-read reading list for parents who come to Pine River is The Parallel Process, Working and Growing Alongside Your Child in Treatment. And the author is joining us this evening. I've read the book several times and have summarized it for several parents. So I'm very excited that she's here tonight. So I want you all to help me in welcoming Krissy Pozatek. I just have a little intro that I'm going to read for her. So Krissy Pozatek, MSW, started in wilderness therapy, adolescent and young adult treatment field in 1996. She graduated from Middlebury College with a joint undergraduate degree in environmental studies and geography. Krissy completed her graduate training in clinical social work, both at the Smith College School for Social Work and at NM Highlands University. Krissy's clinical experience includes the treatment of depression, anxiety, dual diagnosis, adoption issues, trauma, self-harming behavior, substance use, and family system problems. So a lot of what we see at Pine River. Krissy currently works as a parent coach with parents of struggling adolescents and young adults in her coaching practice, Parallel Process, established in 2006. Krissy also conducts parent workshops, staff trainings, and speaks all over her country, and now also our country, hopefully. She is a visiting professor at Middlebury College. Krissy also works with 360 Transitions, which is a home transition program. Krissy also offers parenting e-courses and a virtual group coaching class and is active on Instagram. She is the author of 3 books, the first which I mentioned, The Parallel Process, but also Brave Parenting, a Buddhist-inspired guide to raising emotionally resilient children, and Brave Teaching, bringing emotional resiliency skills from the wilderness into the classroom. So please welcome Krissy Pozatek. And for those of you who didn't see the housekeeping slides, just so we know, there will be some time for Q&A at the end of our session. If you can just put your questions as they pop into your mind into the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our very best to answer as many as we can. So thank you, Krissy, for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Amanda, and thank you for inviting me here, and thank you all of you for showing up. So very excited to talk with you all and dive into my topic. So tonight I'm going to be talking about rewriting the parent-child script. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about all the parallel process concepts and skills and applying it to your parenting so you can have sort of healthy emotional boundaries and be there to support your child's emotional growth and maturation. So that being said, I'm going to go into some slides. So I'm going to share my screen. Just one sec here. And okay. All right. Well, thanks everyone for being here. So tonight we're going to be talking about rewriting the parent-child script, okay? And so many adolescent and parent relationships get stuck in these adolescent years into the young adult years. I mean, sometimes it's, even younger. And a lot of when these relational patterns get stuck, especially when a child's struggling, if you have a child, which I imagine you're here tonight because you've had a child struggle, many of the children today getting stuck are children that are highly sensitive, right? They're children that have more anxiety. They're more, sort of vulnerable to stimuli, maybe attentional focuses, maybe they get overwhelmed easily, maybe they have sort of somatic sensitivities, and then obviously learning issues. So there's a whole range of sensitivities that I think interfere with children. I don't want to even say there are problems with the child. It could just be the child is struggling with the school systems, the culture, the family systems that we're in. And what happens is that child struggling, many parents step in, right? They step in, they become more involved, they start to merge even with their child and their child's problems. And this results in some very stuck patterns. And again, I just want to really comment that my aim of my book and all of my teaching is not by any means to judge parents. All parents' intentions are good. All parents love their children. And of course, if you see your child in any distress, what are you trying to do? You're trying to help, right? You're trying to make it better. So if you've gotten stuck in an enmeshed pattern, if you see that maybe some of your habits and behaviors have not served your child in the long run, forgive yourself, really forgive yourself, have compassion. Having a child struggle is not easy. Going through what you've gone through is not easy. So have compassion for yourself. And really the goal of this talk is not to beat you up. It's to bring more awareness, learn new skills, have a new focus, and to empower yourself that you can change your parent-child script, right? You can empower yourself. You can move in a new direction, right? Parenting a child who's struggling is so disempowering, right? Parents feel so powerless, especially if your child has substance issues, depression, self-harm, maybe suicidal ideation, right? This is very scary. And so having a child struggle in these ways is very overwhelming and can feel very powerless as a parent. So what I want to talk about tonight is how to empower you, right? So how you can shift some of these ways that you're showing up in the relationship. So what is enmeshment? Enmeshment is, like I said, one of the ways that the parent-child relationship is getting stuck. It's a lot of what I focus on in the parallel process. And what I've sort of defined it here, there's probably other definitions, is that enmeshment happens when the parent becomes responsible for the child's emotions and the child's problems. Okay, so the parent is starting to take the child's emotions and the child's problems onto their lap, right? And again, this happens very fluidly when the child's young and struggling, okay? And a secondary aspect to enmeshment is when the parent might also make the child responsible for their feelings, right? That's almost more getting into the codependency, right? Enmeshment's sort of like the parent and child are merged, but the codependency is like, I do this for you, you do this for me, right? It kind of goes both ways. So either way, the system can get stuck. And the second aspect is when the parent starts to say, like, you're frustrating me, or you're making me feel X, Y, Z, right? So the parent's blaming the child for how the parent feels, right? And then very frequently, the child is blaming the parent for how they feel. I remember working with this mom once, and I was the parent coach, and then there was a mentor working with the child, and the mom said to me, Krissy, my child makes me insane. And then the child was saying to his mentor, my mom is driving me crazy, my mom's making me insane. And it was, do you see how the system gets stuck, you guys? Right? It's this very circular loop. And so one of the first things I said to this mom is, your child isn't making you insane, right? What are you feeling? Overwhelmed, right? Powerless, maybe angry, anxious. Okay, who's responsible for those emotions? The mom is. And I said, if you're blaming your emotions on your child, guess what? Your child's blaming their emotions onto you. Are you responsible for your child's emotions? No. So is your child responsible for your emotions? No. And this is how we shift the dynamics, is the parent has to start to take ownership and to say, I feel insane. I feel insane. Not my child's making me insane. I feel insane because I am overwhelmed with my feelings related to my child. Do you see right then and there, there's more ownership? Do you see how that's a shift? So then the parent has to start taking ownership about why they feel insane. And that's just I know it's just a word, insane, right? But just overwhelmed, let's use. You sort of have to start to take ownership over that and work on their own self-regulation, right? So one of the things another way to see enmeshment is I call it a we. So I'm going to share it with this emotional roller coaster, but the we is when the parent and the child are stuck in this we, right? And I hear it a lot, we're getting through the semester, we're figuring out this problem, we're applying for colleges, we're whatever it is, right? There's a we. And so the child is stuck in this we, and the parent's stuck in the we. And here's another metaphor, okay? So stepping off the emotional roller coaster. So when you're in a we, it's as if you are in the roller coaster car with your child. So your child is having their highs and their lows. They're going up and they're going down, and they're going up and they're down. And so when you're enmeshed, your child's up, your child's having a good day. Guess what? You're up. You had a good day. Your child's down, your child had a bad day, then you're down, you had a bad day. So it's as if you're in the roller coaster car with your child, meaning that life is happening to your child is actually happening to you too, because your child's high is your high, your child's low is your low. And there's none of what I call this healthy separation. And so on one level, I remember talking to this mom once and she goes, Krissy, that's insane. Like, of course I'm in my child's roller coaster car. Because I was talking about stepping out of the roller coaster. Like, can you step out of this emotional roller coaster and get on the tarmac, get on the ground, get on the pavement at the base of the roller coaster? And that means you can wave to your child on a good day when they're up. You can wave to them on a bad day, meaning you can hold space for your child's ups and downs. You can, but you're stable. You're responsible for your own stability, right? You're on the tarmac. You're not on the roller coaster car, okay? And I said this once in a workshop, and this mom said to me, that's abandonment. She's like, if I get out of the roller coaster car, I'm abandoning my child, right? And she started to get frustrated with me. And I get it. I get that many of these relationships are very, vulnerable, right? It's a very vulnerable feeling with your child. But I said to this mom, okay, so say your child, the roller coaster car is crashing, okay? And then you're subsequently crashing, right? Because you're in the roller coaster car too. Are you in a stable place to parent? If the child's reeling and you're reeling, can you show up and be present for your child? No, right? When I talk to parents who say, because many of the families I work with have done sort of a treatment program or a therapy program, and say your child had a setback, say your child dropped a level, say your child went backward in the program. For many parents I work with, it's like their wellness fell off a cliff, right? They didn't eat very well that week. And maybe they drank too much. Maybe they sunk into a depression and got in their bed, and maybe they never exercised, right? Their wellness sort of fell off a cliff because their child had a setback. Right. And we always, of course, we're always going to be impacted by our children to some degree, right? Of course, we're so happy with their successes, and their failures are going to hit us. But what I'm talking about is your well-being is based on your child's ups and downs, right? And that's something to really check in with yourself about. Are you enmeshed? Are you on this roller coaster car with your child? So I'm going to just go over what I call the 4 principles of the parallel process, okay? And what we are trying to do here, you guys, is unenmesh. We're trying to get out of the roller coaster car. We're trying to get on solid ground so we can be stable, supportive parents, right? And so how do we do this? And so my background, as some of you may know, if you've read the parallel process, is in wilderness therapy. Okay, and wilderness therapy is very transformative. And I saw so many children, young teens, young adults, literally transform in front of my eyes. And they went from being depressed, being shut down, being angry, maybe addicted to a substance, having major anxiety, maybe self-harm. They went from these very vulnerable, unstable places to feeling very empowered, to having that sort of light come back in their eyes, to feeling internal happiness and confidence. And it was just a magical process to watch. And as I switched to parent coaching, which is what I did because a lot of families had regression, right? A lot of kids made progress away from mom and dad, but the minute they were back with mom and dad, things would unravel. right? And so it's discouraging. It's discouraging as a therapist, right? To see the kids get on top of the world, to take accountability for their problems, to be vulnerable, to own their issues, to become an emotional leader. It's really amazing to see them make this progress, and then to see them go right back home and be bullying their parents or regressed or school refusing or whatever they were doing. And so that's really one of the reasons why I wrote the parallel process. And as I was starting to do this parent work, I thought, what are these principles of wilderness? Like, why did these kids change so much? Like, what was it? And these are sort of the 4 principles that I came up with that I have actively worked to teach parents to bring into the home. So you don't need a wilderness program to do this, you guys. You can bring this in your home today. So that's what I'm going to be going over. So number 1 is what I call a safe container. So in a wilderness setting or in a treatment setting, right, the staff, the adults are in charge. They're there to set the rules, the boundaries, and the container, okay? And they're in their, in a program, they're in their like professional authority, but I guess in the home, you could say they're in their, parents can be in their parental authority, right? You guys are, you have the authority in your home to set your rules and boundaries, to create safety for your children. Just like the staff in a program get to set the rules and boundaries for the safety of the program and the environment that the kids are in. And so one of the very clean and clear and obvious principles is being in your parental authority and setting a safe container, okay? Number 2 is emotional attunement. Emotional attunement, something I learned in wilderness, is really profound, okay? And what emotional attunement is that all feelings are okay. So what we want to do when we show up with our children is we want to say all feelings are okay. The whole range of emotions are okay. So if a child is sad, we're like, tell me more. That's important. If a child's angry, we're going to lean in and say, yeah, that sounds really frustrating. That sounds important. Tell me more about that anger, right? If they have anxiety, we're going to listen and lean in. So emotions always got attention, right? Emotions were always valued and validated and accepted, okay? Whereas again, in the outside world, what do we do when kids have negative feelings? We're like, don't feel that, sweetie. I'll fix it. Let me do this. I'll change it for you. Right? How often do we stop and say, that's important. Tell me more. I want to hear that. Right? We don't do that in our culture. Most of us don't do that in our parenting. So when I saw this in the wilderness, it was very magical to see that we stop and say, okay, you're anxious. I'm going to like pull up a front chair to that feeling and tell me more. Right? We're not rushing them out of it. We're not fixing it. We're not changing it. We're holding space for it. Okay. Number 3 is set behavioral boundaries. So if their anger, right, which is totally valid and okay, becomes a behavior like disrespect or yelling or throwing a rock or something, or having a fight with another kid in the group, right? If their anger turns into a behavior, right, because the feeling is okay, the behavior may not be okay. So if the emotion turns into a behavior, there's a boundary, right? Totally okay to be frustrated, totally okay to be mad. I'm always here to listen. Not okay to yell at me, not okay to disrespect me. If you choose to disrespect me, we will be holding you accountable. You're not moving forward in the program. Maybe you're losing privileges, right? So it was so clear. All feelings were valued and accepted. All behaviors were held accountable for. Amazing. It was so clear in the wilderness, okay? And then principle 4, again, something we're not good at as parents, is valuing struggle. So in a wilderness setting, right, the whole premise of wilderness is struggle. Kids are put in discomfort. Kids are put in uncomfortable environments. They're asked to sleep on the ground and to eat beans and rice and to hike, 5 miles a day and to talk about their feelings and take accountability for their behavior. And sleep, make their shelter every night and make a primitive fire, right? All of this is uncomfortable and unpleasant. They don't have any of their comforts from home, right? But it's on purpose. We're actually putting kids in discomfort on purpose. And this is amazing, right? That we are intentionally saying it's okay to struggle, right? And even valuing struggle, right? Letting kids be with discomfort, letting kids be with struggle. And I will put in the caveat that it's safe struggle. So we don't want our kids to have unsafe struggle. And I'll go over that in a little bit, right? We want them to have safe struggle every day, because safe struggle is where growth and maturation happens, okay? So along with these 4 principles, and I'm going to go into more depth on them, what starts to happen, what I observed in a wilderness setting, is there starts to be this internal resource development, as you can see on the bottom of the slide, right? Kids are naturally learning to regulate, problem solve, have delayed gratification, manage their emotions, sort of more executive functioning, completing tasks, accountability. So there's this like inner shift when there's safe boundaries in a container around them, right? They're allowed to feel, all feelings are okay, all behaviors are held accountable for, and all struggle is valued, right? So the combination of these 4 principles, what I observed, created this maturation and ownership. Kids are taking more ownership over their lives and individuating from mom and dad and whatever victim narrative they have, like you ruined my life, or if whatever, you just give me my phone, I'll be happy, right? So I want to contrast this, as you can see on the left, or I don't know how it's showing up on your screen, but on one side is the 4 principles with the safe container, the emotional attunement, the behavioral boundaries, and valuing struggle, right? But on the right is really what most homes look like, right? Whether you're Canadian, American, this is what is showing up in our culture, today. So let's just go over it real quick. So number 1, parents being in their parental authority. What's really happening is kids are power struggling, right? Parents are giving away their power. They're giving away their authority. They're going into negotiations. They're getting in the power struggle. They want their child's approval. They want their child's permission at times. They want their child's acceptance. So their parents are sort of ceding their parental authority. They are, right? So there's more power struggling, right? Number 2, we're not emotionally attuning, right? We're emotionally rescuing. So instead of valuing their feelings, we want to fix their feelings. We want to change their feelings, okay? Number 3, rather than having set behavioral boundaries, we are negotiating boundaries, right? We have inconsistent boundaries, or we have permissive boundaries, or maybe we have harsh boundaries, but then we cave our boundaries, okay? And then number 4, instead of valuing struggle, what do we want to do? We want to mitigate struggle, right? That helicopter parenting, right? We want to, a lot of us have our antenna up for any struggle our children's having because we want to fix it and change it. And, there's the saying, the fighter jet parent, right? We want to shoot all the problems out of the way. So everything's happy for our child, right? So can you guys see how things unravel when children go back, when teens, young adults go back home from a program? Is all this integrity, right? All this integrity of the program starts to unravel because there's no parental authority, feelings aren't attuned to, behavioral boundaries aren't set, and struggle isn't valued. Okay, and so this is that unraveling process that I see. And this is what creates that delayed maturation. The kids aren't showing up in, like a lot of kids maybe chronologically, they're 15 or they're 17 or they're 18, but emotionally they're like 11, 12, 13, or maybe they're even younger, right? When parents are doing this intervening, right? There's this delayed maturation. And even like a lot of kids are having this failure to launch. I work in a I do support groups for like a young adult program, and these are all over 18, and there's a lot of delayed maturation. And just to, this is sort of an add-on to that, but when we have these enmeshed boundaries, okay, so when you're in a we, right, there's this collapsing, right? There's this collapsing of being in your parental authority. And I just give some examples, like parents may feel so bad that their child's struggling, right? We have so much empathy for our children that we sort of fold our boundaries. Number two, maybe parents are more reactive, right? Maybe they yell or get mad, but then they feel guilty about yelling or getting mad. And so then they fold their boundaries. And then the third thing that I see a lot is parents actually want their children's approval and validation, so they can't stand in their authority. Now, I'm working with a mom recently, and she literally just straight up said to me, she's like, Krissy, I want my child's approval. Like, I'm looking for validation from my child. She's looking to get her needs met, right? And again, do you see this flip-flopping? Like, you think it's the opposite. The parent is there to meet the child's need. Like, we're there to raise the children, right? But if there's any kind of trauma or unresolved, issues from our past, right? We may be looking to get our needs met in our relationships. And guess what? Our children is a relationship. And so this mom was aware of it, and she owned it, and she was actively working on it, that desire. And then, of course, guess what her son did? He rejected her. He rejected her every day because he knew he had that power over her. And this is the, before I go to the next slide, this is the really tricky thing about enmeshment that I want to get into, which is it's a dance, right? It's the parent and the child are in this power struggle together. They're in this we. But what happens is that the child sees all the vulnerable buttons, right? They see when mom falls apart, or when dad gets angry, or when mom has an anxiety spiral, or when dad shuts down. And what are they doing? And one of the things I talk about in my book is the cows that are checking the fence. I'll just give you the metaphor really quick. So there's this metaphor story I share in my book where one of the staff I worked with in wilderness, he used to work on a ranch, like in Wyoming, and he was sort of learning to be a rancher. And they would let the cattle out to pasture, and all the cattle started pressing their bodies up against the fence, all around the fence, to see if it was secure. And once it was secure, they'd go into the center and eat the fresh alfalfa. And so he said to the rancher, he said, why are they doing that? Like, why are the cattle pressing up against the fence? And he said, oh, they want to make sure it's secure because they don't want any predators to get in. They don't want any of their calves to slip out. It was just their instinct, right? And he really made that connection to teens. Well, what are teens doing? They're checking the fence. Is it secure, right? Because if it's not secure, if mom falls apart, if I do that, if dad shuts down, if I do that, if mom, right? They're looking for the weak links in the fence, because if it's not secure, they don't feel as safe, right? And that's why kids keep pushing the same buttons, right? Because they don't know that mom and dad aren't fully developed, right? Or that, when we're kids, we're very egocentric. We don't know that, like, my dad still is whatever, low self-esteem, or my mom has an anxiety disorder, or whatever it is, right? Kids don't know that. And so they're like, why is everything changing? Like, why were they safe parents one minute and the next minute they weren't so safe? So that's why they're pushing on these buttons, you guys, because the minute it's secure, they relax their nervous systems. And I'll just give you a couple examples. I worked with this mom who she had a daughter go to treatment, and she was involved in lots of promiscuous, sneaking out at night, substance abuse, school refusal. And so they actually moved to a new town all together to live closer to family. And the mom, she was a single mom, and she got the, house next to like the cousins, and the daughter was going to school. She was under a behavior contract. Everything was going okay. And one morning she said her daughter stopped getting up for school. And so I was like, okay, well, tell me what happened. Did you follow the contract? And the mom's like, well, no. And I was like, okay, well, tell me what happened. So you go into her room in the morning, and she's like, yeah, I go into the room in the morning, Krissy, and she gives me this glare. And I said, okay, tell me about the glare. And she said, well, now that I think of it, it's this glare that like my mother used to give to me. And it's just this, I just have this complete and total feeling of shame. And I don't know how to hold a boundary. Right? Isn't that so interesting, you guys? Like, the daughter found the look that the mom hadn't healed from her mother. And she said to me, and I don't want to say, she then went, my mom was an amazing mother and she was such a good mother, and I don't want to say anything bad about her, but whenever she gave me this look, I fell apart and felt total and utter shame. And so here we go, second generation, the daughter found the glare. And so I said to this mom, well, you need to get ahead of the glare, right? You have to wake up in the morning and be ready for the glare. Like, okay, glare, come get me. Like, you need to be ahead of the glare. And so if she gives you the glare, no big deal. And if it is triggering you, talk to your therapist, like, get your support. And so this mom started to become really aware of her weak link in the fence was her daughter's glare. And so she started to get ahead of it. And then she started to hold the contract. And she even said to me, you can glare at me if you want, I'm still going to hold the contract. So she started like actually getting in her parental authority, pushing back. She's like, glare at me all day, but you're going to be losing privileges if you don't go to school. And so guess what? The daughter started to get back on track because she didn't want to lose Snapchat. She didn't want to lose her phone. And the mom started she started securing the fence, right? Does that metaphor make sense? She started securing the weak links in the fence. And what happened is she said to me a few weeks later, she goes, Krissy, she talks to me nonstop in the car now. It's almost like she's 12 again. And what that said to me was she relaxed her nervous system to just be a kid. It's like the cow going to the center of the pasture, right? That they can relax and just eat the fresh alfalfa and they're not worried. They're not activated. So the daughter knew, I can't bully my mom anymore. I can't find her weak link. So I'm just going to relax and just be a kid. And she's like, it's bizarre, Krissy. Like, she was emotionally punishing me a week ago, and now she's talking to me nonstop. So I have so many examples of that, you guys. And so I ask you to look at your vulnerable points, your weak links in the fence. Okay, so we're going to segue to, I'm going to deep dive. That was a little bit about parental authority. Now I'm going to deep dive into emotional attunement, okay? Because emotional attunement is huge. Emotional attunement is huge. So this is something I have called the feelings journal, or it's a feelings sheet. And I just want everyone to take a minute and just scan all the words, look at the colors and just check in. What do you feel right now? Just do what I call a feelings check. What do you feel right now? And when I started to do wilderness, we did these feelings checks 3 times a day. Okay. And I, found myself just being like, oh, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm okay. Right. Nope. Those aren't feelings, Krissy. Those aren't good feelings. It has to be an emotion, right? It has to be an emotion. It has to be a feeling word. Okay. And the more I personally started to do this, the more I see kids start to do this, is they start to become aware of their inner landscape. right? They're not just reading everybody else. And as parents, right, we're so focused on our children, our partner, our spouse, our, coworker, but how tuned in are we to our inner landscape? Okay. And the other thing that's really important about this slide is the color. So we tend to value some feelings as good and some feelings as bad, right? Happy, good, sad, bad, right? But if we start to look at emotions as colors, right? Like if we think about the A to Z of emotions, and then we think about whatever, the red to black, like the color spectrum, right? Every single feeling, every single color is essential to be living a full and vibrant life. Like we're not going to say red's a good color, black's a bad color, or green's a good color and blue's a bad color, right? All colors are essential to live a full life, to have a beautiful world, right? And the same is true for the emotional spectrum. In fact, the more we feel, the more subtlety, the more emotional vocabulary, right? The more we go to the A to the Z of feelings, right? The more emotionally literate we are. Brené Brown has a wonderful new book out talking about the more we feel, the better, the more subtlety, the more range, and actually the more resilient we are. But how are we raising kids today? We want kids to just be yellow. Am I right with that? Asking all the parents in the room, right? We want our kids to be yellow. And so often we're fixing all these other feelings to get them to one feeling, right? How resilient is that? So if our kids are feeling green, they have no skill set. If our kids are red, they have no skill set because we're trying to externally manage them all to yellow, right? We want them happy. I give this assignment to parents, so this is something you guys can try. It's called the Feelings Journal Assignment, where you just do a feelings check-in 3 times a day. So morning, noon, and night, you just write down 1, 2, or 3 feeling words. You don't have to have a whole journal entry, a whole story. You're just writing your feeling word, okay? And I had this dad, because he was working on his relationship with his daughter, and he was very enmeshed. And I said, okay, why don't you do this feelings journal for a week? So the next week we got on the call, and he's like, oh, I did the assignment, Krissy. I did it 3 times a day. And he goes, the strangest thing I noticed. I was like, what? And he said, well, it wasn't a bad week. It was an okay week. It was just busy. It was busy with work. But I noticed I never wrote happy once. And he goes, all I try to do is make my daughter happy. And it made him realize he's not present or validating any of her other experiences. Meanwhile, he just went through a whole week and he said it wasn't a bad week and he never felt happy. So I thought that was really good insight. So the point I'm trying to get at, you guys, is that our goal is not to have happy children. Our goal is to have emotionally healthy children, which means they can be with the whole range of emotions, the A to Z. We want them to feel everything, right? So they have a skill set to move in and out of feelings from worried to sad to embarrassed to disappointed to elated to relieved to betrayed. They're all okay, right? So the metaphor I use for processing feelings, one sec. The metaphor I use for processing feelings, I call the river of emotion, okay? So emotions are, I know I said we're like a color, but if we think about emotions throughout a day, right? Emotions are like a river, meaning they're always coming and going. So a healthy emotional river is one that's moving. So for example, you might wake up and feel tired and sad, and then you might feel anxious and tense, and then you might feel calm and present, and then you might feel worried and frustrated, and then you might feel relieved or at ease, right? That could be your day. That's healthy. Do you see? It's moving. You're able to move in and out of feelings, right? However, most of us do what I call dam the river, right? We feel something we don't want to feel. So if we're feeling something that we don't want to feel, most of us, and I would say most all adults and all children on some level, right? We stop the flow. We dam our emotional river. So if, say, you're worried or anxious, a lot of us go into like going into tension or resisting the feeling, pushing it away, tense body sensations. And what we're doing ultimately is we're disconnecting the mind body. And then we go into this shallow sort of survival breathing. Okay. The same as, say, you're depressed or sad. And these, it could be any emotion, but I just put these as examples. If you get depressed or sad, right? I don't want to feel that feeling, right? Your body's like, nope, I don't want to feel it. So we go into this damming or resisting. And so we may go into the disconnected or heavy feelings in the body, a state of not feeling, again, the shallow breathing, the feeling of disconnection, okay? And this is ultimately what I call stress. You know, it's stress in the body, because stress is not a feeling, stress is a state. At least that's what I think. I think stress is a state where we are in resistance to our life. We're in opposition. I don't want to feel, or I don't want to go to work, or I don't want to go to school, or I don't want to do this, right? So we go into this damming our emotional currents, okay? And then what do we do as parents, right? And again, I say this, I do this as well. I've done this as a parent. We all do this on some level, is we then dam our children's emotions. Because if we can't be with our own feelings, we cannot be with their sad, their anger, their anxiety, right? It's like nails on a chalkboard. It's like we can't tolerate it. And so when our children are upset, what do? We want to cheer them up. We want to fix their feelings. We want to change their emotion. If they're angry, we want to appease them. We want to bargain with them. Maybe we threaten them to try to get them to stop. If our child has anxiety, right, we may negotiate with them or cajole them or beg them to interact. So what are all these things we're doing, you guys? We're saying, don't feel that. Right? We're trying to fix and change and manage them. We've stopped their flow. Okay. And then what do kids do? They need to keep looking for external things to feel better, right? It could be tech, it could be substances, it could be just avoidance, right? They're looking to feel better externally. Okay. So again, we all do this on some level, and maybe it's human nature. But what I'm trying to do is bring awareness to a new way. I'm not trying to beat us up. I'm trying to bring awareness to a new way. And the new way is, how do we keep our children's rivers moving? How do we keep their currents moving? We need to validate. Okay, we have to listen and value their feelings. Wow, so that is sad, sweetie. Wow, that is scary to try new things. Wow, that sounds difficult. Tell me more, right? We want to turn the flow back on in their emotion. You know, I know sometimes it's overwhelming, and that's where we might need a behavior boundary, right? Say their anger turns into yelling at us, right? That's where we say, it's okay to be angry at me, not okay to yell at me, right? So we still need to have that integrity with our boundaries. But I share this because I want you guys to think in a new way. Again, we're changing the script. We want to lean in. And what I find, you guys, over and over and over again, is when parents validate, when parents attune emotionally, it de-escalates the child. It just does, right? Because they feel heard. It helps them integrate and drop into their body. And maybe they breathe a little better. Like when we say, you know, like that must be so hard. Tell me what happened. How was your day? Right? Another example I like to give is like, say you came home from work and you go to your spouse, I hate my job, or I'm going to quit. I hate my boss, I'm going to quit, right? So the rescue response is, well, you don't hate your job, and I'm sure it's fine, and it's not that big of a deal. And, that's not really what you mean. So like we think we're cheering them up, but actually what are we doing? We're disvalidating. And that's what do we say that as parents all the time? If a kid comes home and says, I hate my math teacher, we'll be like, well, I'm sure he's okay. And well, what happened? And then we go into wanting to fix it, right? But instead, if you come home and you say, I hate my job and I think I'm going to quit, we just need to say, oh my gosh, what happened? Like, sounds like a really tough day. Tell me what happened. That must be so frustrating, right? How are you going to deal with that? So we turn into validation and attunement, and this is helps the nervous system relax and come down a notch or two. And then really the goal is, like, remember I talked about getting off the roller coaster, right? We want to have what I call healthy separation. So we want to have these two rivers side by side, right? Where the child's allowed to have their feelings, the parent's allowed to have their feelings, right? No one's damning the other. No one's controlling and managing the other, right? You don't have to be this way for me. I don't have to be this way for you, right? We're just letting your child have their feelings. You're allowed to have your feelings. And actually, you can share. I mean, I know it's not your friend, so there's some limits of what you share as a parent, but that emotional sharing is really the glue. That's the glue in relationships. So many parents want a close parent-child bond, but the bond is through enmeshment, right? It's more transactional. It's like, oh, I'm upset, I'll fix it. Or I can read your cues and get you what you want. That's not a healthy reciprocal relationship, right? Emotional closeness comes when we just share without an agenda. Like, I'm having a really hard day. Oh, okay. Let's go for a drive. I want to hear about it, or whatever it is. So there's no agenda, there's no fixing, there's no manipulation. It's just sharing. And that's another thing I see all the time. Just like I said, that daughter the mom said she acts like she's 12 and talks nonstop in the car. I have so many examples of that because it became safe, right? And now they're sharing, right? Because the nervous system's relaxed and they can just share. And that they're getting those needs met, those attachment needs are getting met because they're not testing anymore. They're not testing the fence, right? That's really what we're trying to get to. So I know we'll probably do questions at the end. So I'm segueing now into behavior boundaries. So hopefully if anyone has questions about emotional attunement, you can just put it in the chat and I'll answer in the questions. So emotional attunement is so important. It's more important, or to have an effective boundary, I think we always have to attune, because a lot of parents come right in with the boundary, like a child's tantruming, we might come in with a no, right? If we come in with a no, okay, well, let me just say this differently. When a child has a tantrum, and this could even be like a toddler, but it could be a 15-year-old, right? Let's be honest. So if a 15-year-old's melting down, or a 20-year-old, it's a mixture of a feeling and a behavior, right? They're having a feeling and they're having a behavior, right? Maybe they're punching a hole in the wall. Maybe they're trashing their room. Maybe they're whatever they're doing, okay? Some parents come in with the yes, right? Oh my gosh, you're so upset, sweetie, like they want to fix it, right? So when they're doing that, they're yesing the emotion, but they're also yesing the behavior. Some other parents come in with the no, and they're like, you can't do that. You're in trouble. You're grounded. So they're knowing the behavior, but they're also knowing the emotion. So what we want to do to be effective boundary setters is we always want to say, I can see how upset you are. You seem so angry. Your feelings matter to me. You matter to me. I want to hear them. but it's not okay to act out this way. So we're saying yes to the feeling, but then we're saying no to the behavior. So we're saying yes and no together. And this is effective boundary setting. And then we're saying no, if you will be losing privileges when you behave that way, or we will be holding you accountable. And that limit helps kids stop and regulate. It really does. I see it over and over again. Because if kids know there's skin in the game, they're going to lose something, right? They're more likely to stop. If they know they can blow up and create chaos and drama in the house and nothing happens and they're just released, like they're release valving onto the family, right? They're going to do that, right? Because that's a way to get their needs met. But if they learn every time that happens, they lose their phone, they lose their car privileges, right? They're just, and again, it's not punitive. So we're going to go over this in a minute. It's not punitive. We're not punishing them. We're holding them accountable. So if they know they're held accountable, they may be less likely to do these behaviors, right? So I want to go over the boundaries really quick. So number one, parents tell me all the time, Krissy, I took everything away. Boundaries don't work, or consequences don't work. And I want to really unpack that. Okay. So what does it mean that consequences don't work? Right. What that means is if I took everything away, I expected my child to change. And I don't think boundaries are intended to change behavior. So number one, consequences are not intended to change behavior. All consequences are doing is accountability for a rule. So I like the example of speed limits. So if you're speeding and you're pulled over, is the police person giving you a ticket to change your driving? Or are they giving you a ticket because you were going too fast? And it's not safe for the roads, right? They're holding the boundary to create safety on the roads. They're not holding the boundary to change your behavior. They can't control if you change your behavior, right? You can speed 10 miles down the road, you can speed again, right? They're not out there trying to change every driver. They're out there to create safety on the roads. So that's how we need to think of it. You are there to create safety in your home, okay? You are not there to change your child. You can't control if your child changes. But do you see how empowering that is as a parent? You are there to be in your parental authority to create safety in your home, okay? You are not there to change your child, because if your child feels like they want to be changed, they will power struggle you. They're like, you can't change me. So some kids are like, take it all away, mom, take my computer, take my phone, take the door off my wall, because they're in a power struggle, right? They're like, you can't change me. So the reframe, right? The rewriting of the script is you can change if you want, but if you break this rule, right, we will hold you accountable because it violates our safety boundaries. So if you use drugs in the house, right, you lose your phone privileges or car privileges and you can't drive. And they say, well, you can't control me. You can't change me. You're like, you're right. I can't. But I can hold you accountable to our boundaries, right? We pay for your phone, we pay for the car, so we can choose to not let you have that. And if you want to continue to use and lose those privileges, I guess that's your choice, right? So do you see, we're not trying to change the child. We're trying to create safety in our home. What I find is that when we let go of changing the child, that's when the shifts happen, okay? So we always want to give a consequence to what I call our non-negotiables, right? A non-negotiable is our non-negotiables. So like going to school is a non-negotiable, being respectful is a non-negotiable, whatever your curfew or your homework or doing a chore. These things that are non-negotiables, you always want to attach to a consequence, right? So there's skin in the game, right? So it means something. We don't want to consequence them because they didn't take a shower. Or, I mean, I guess if they never shower, maybe you can decide if that's a non-negotiable. But you have to decide what are your non-negotiables and what are your healthy choices, right? I don't think we can consequence kids because they didn't exercise or they didn't eat healthy today, right? We want to reward what I call healthy choices. If they're working out every day and they're taking care of their mental health and they're going to therapy and they're eating healthier and they're going to AA, give them a reward, validate those, because those are good, healthy choices. Just like in society, I think we're validated if we make good choices, right? We're rewarded in different ways. Like even something as simple as having like lower health insurance or life insurance or things like that, if you take care of your health, right? We're rewarded. So we want to mirror this with our kids. So we're not controlling them. We're saying, if you choose to do that, we'll reward it. If you choose to do that, we're going to have a boundary. And then we let kids, again, be in that container. They get to regulate themselves within our boundaries. And we always want our boundaries to be kind, firm, and safe. And we want to be regulated. If we're dysregulated, if we're triggered, you need to step away, right? You need to step away and become regulated. Go for a walk around the block, go for a drive, take a break in your room, right? You're going to be so much more effective if you're regulated. And even better, co-parenting, do it together, right? So the child can't split mom and dad. And then the last thing is we want to have our language be choice-based, which I've already sort of touched on, right? We want to use the language of choice-based. So we want to say, instead of you have to, you need to, you should, right? Which is control-based. You have to do this, you need to do that, you should do that. That's just an invitation for a power struggle, right? Because kids can say, well, I don't have to do that. I don't need to do that, right? So we want to move to choice-based language where we say, you choose to follow the contract or not. If you follow it, great, you're building privileges or you're earning trust, you're gaining privileges. If you choose not to follow it, if you don't go to school, we're probably going to hold you accountable and you might be getting more treatment. So we're just saying it's your choice, right? We're not controlling them. And this is something I really see clean up the home. Like I had this one family where the son was extremely dysregulated. He drama every day, power struggles, guilting and blaming parents. The mom was really vulnerable to their approval. So he was very harsh on mom. And, they started doing things like taking the phone away and he'd like knock on their door literally till like 4 a.m. to get the phone. And then they'd finally cave and give it to him, right? So this is like the level of chaos they lived with. And they finally started to do a contract. They started to follow it. And I think in about a month, the dad said to me, Krissy, there's no more drama in the house. Because everything he does, he just loses, like the consequence isn't landing on us anymore, it's landing on him. He's just losing a privilege, right? So if he knocks on our door, he just won't get the phone for another 24 hours or whatever it is, right? They had their consequences set up. And what they said is, now we just have a depressed kiddo on our hands, right? He's not acting it out in the parent-child relationship anymore, right? He doesn't, again, the fence is secure. So now they're just seeing what's really going on is they have a depressed kiddo who has low self-esteem, who doesn't have friends, right? Who has social anxiety. And actually, he's talking to his parents about it now. He's not fighting them. Actually, he's talking to his therapist about it now. So even though it's very hard to see what's underneath, like it's hard to see your depressed kiddo, right? No parent wants to see that, but it's a more accurate picture, right? It's a much more accurate picture of what's really going on than all the drama, all the behavior, ups and downs, the roller coaster, the hole in the wall, whatever it is, the cut on their wrist, right? It's a much more accurate picture, and the child is much more likely to seek and utilize support. So with a lot of these parallel process concepts, you can clean up the home and get to this cleaner picture. So I know we're about to go to questions. Let me just see if there's anything else I want to say. So the control-based language is you have to, you need to, you should. The choice-based is it's your choice to follow the contract or not. If you make the choice, this is how you'll be held accountable. So we detach a little bit, right? We're letting go. We're stepping out of the roller coaster car. We're letting them have their ups and downs, right? And then we're taking care of ourselves. we're doing our own self-care every day. We're prioritizing ourselves, whether it's your own therapy or your friend group or your hobby or your whatever creates your stability. Because the more you're stable and regulated, and you're going to show up as a better parent, right? Okay, I'm just going to go out of the screen and I'll just share this last thing around safe struggle or valuing struggle. So the last item is valuing struggle. And the last thing I'll just say on that is, so we all, I guess you have to differentiate, is this safe or unsafe? Whatever struggle your child's having, is it safe or unsafe? And I know that can be gray, right? Because for many parents, any struggle is bad, right? Any struggle is unsafe. We want to fix, we want to get in, we want to solve it. But you have to stop. You know, like I remember working with this mom and her son was in a program and he was really into rock climbing and it was what he really wanted to do. And it was like an outlet for him. And instead of for his elective, he didn't get rock climbing, he got fly fishing. And the mom was like going to call the school and have this big thing. And I said to her, is that safe or unsafe struggle? And she started to laugh and she's like, it's safe struggle. I can let him have fly fishing, right? And so, you know, you have to stop and ask yourself, you guys, if it's safe struggle, we need to let our kids have it. And safe struggle is struggle, like everyday struggle with your homework, with your teacher, with I mean, it doesn't mean, say your child has a learning issue. You don't say, oh, I'm going to let them have struggle. You're going to go get them tested, get them support, right? So learning issue could be unsafe. So you have to have that discernment. But if it's just like sitting down and focusing, if it's, you know, struggle with their peers, struggle with their siblings, struggle with respectful communication, we need to let them have this, you guys, every day. Maybe they got rejected. Maybe they had some failure. Maybe they got cut from a team, right? We need to let them have safe struggle. Unsafe struggle, okay, is anything that's abuse, trauma, unsafe things online, unsafe content, where we have to intervene. So if it's unsafe struggle, like your child doesn't come home at night, that's unsafe. So be a mama bear, be a papa bear, go rescue your kid. Go rescue your kid if they have unsafe struggle, okay? That's okay. We need to rescue unsafe struggle, okay? But if it's safe struggle, we need to let our children experience it. We need to sit on our hands. We need to validate them. We need to encourage them to problem solve it. And it doesn't mean they can't come to us for advice, but we're not jumping in and fixing and changing it.